Okay, yesterday we were talking about the Shalom Zachar, that the first Friday night after the baby is born, you make a Shalom Zachar. So we said yesterday, there's a lot of things over here, but yesterday we mentioned because the kid forgot the Torah learning and therefore you eat lentils or bulb, whatever it is. Another reason is because you want to, the baby was safe from the womb of the mother. The baby was imprisoned, in Golus, so to speak. And now the baby was born. So there's a lot of interesting things. So some of Hashim asks, so then you should make a Shalom Nekeva also. If the reason is because the baby was born, then you should make a Shalom Nekeva. No, and then even according to the reason, he forgot the Torah, so the Poskim discussed it. They write, the Gemara doesn't say that only the boy fetuses learn Torah, not the girls. So the Pashtas say both learn Torah. So if the thing they forgot the Torah, should be both. The Pearl, you don't make a Shalom Nekeva. In fact, there are contemporary Poskim. I heard a tape from a contemporary Rav, a big Rav, by the way. He said that if somebody today makes a Shalom Nekeva, they're not only they're transgressing a negative commandment of the Torah, but going in the ways of Goyim. Because the reason is only applying for a baby boy, you're making it for a girl because you want to make equality between boys and girls. So that's against halacha, so he said you would even be able if okay, so it's a mini. Well, it's interesting. There's a question in halacha, machlekes really. Is it a sudas mitzvah or not? Some poskim write it's a sudas mitzvah, some poskim write it's not a sudas mitzvah. But they write leproil, the difference also, can you invite somebody to come? Because if it's sudas mitzvah, you invite them to come, then they have to come. So the minig is, in fact, this is all mentioned in halacha. The minig is that after Ma'av, you announce that this person's, there's a Shalom Zach in this house for this and this person. But it says today, in halacha it says, today we don't make a meal, that you invite people for a meal. It's after the meal. People go over there and say l'chaim or whatever it may be.
Why is it negative mitzvah?
Because the fact that people today want to equalize men and women is against other. Men have their role, women have their role. Like they say, the men have the head, the women have the heart. Or other people say the man is the head and the woman's the neck. She tells that head where to move, where to turn. But the different parts of the body, each one's very important. You can't live without the other. But each one has a different role. And the role of they don't make... It was very big, for a time, it was very big, and not so much today. In the modern Orthodox community, there were people that used to make Shalom Nekevas. I don't think maybe they still do, more the liberal ones. But today, I don't hear so much. I used to hear years ago about Shalom Nekeva. I don't hear too much about it today. But first of all, we don't make a bas mitzvah. You're not supposed to make a bas mitzvah like a bar mitzvah. The Rebbe was adamantly against it. The Rebbe said a bas mitzvah you make a lav malka for the friends only, and that's what the Rebbe wrote. Clearly, a bas mitzvah should do. Now today, shluchim, it's an excuse to make an event for the balabatim. It's a whole different story. But the Rebbe clearly writes that the bas mitzvah should be quiet, just the girls, the class, and they should speak Torah and do things, and that's it. But you can't have a bas mitzvah today, like the girl reads the Torah and gets called up to the aliyah. That's definitely forbidden. What? Somebody said something.
If you get invited to a bris,
today you don't invite to a, by the way, the halacha is, the world is mekel, but halachically, you're not supposed to say, I'm inviting you to a bris, because then technically you have an halachic obligation to go. You inform somebody. No, sending invitation doesn't mean anything. Sending invitation doesn't, like a mail, a junk mail. But that's not the invitation. You personally invite somebody to a bris. Now, you asked me yesterday, what happens if a baby is born Friday night, let's say after nightfall? So you make a Shalom Zachar that night, Or do you make it the following Saturday night? When do you make the Shalom Zachar? There's two opinions in halacha. Some poskim say, or the Pri Megadim, I think. The Pri Megadim holds that you make a Suda that, the Shalom Zachar is that night. Most poskim say you make it the next week, and the custom is you make it the following week, not that Friday night. And they're right, because how in the world can you know to get prepared for the practically speaking? How do you know you're going to get prepared for Shalom Zachar? But today, when many people know what they're going to have, and they know when they're having it, so they can figure it out maybe, or whatever.
The Shalom Zachar is always on Friday, right?
Shalom Zachar is Friday night. So it says, why is it Friday night, Taka? Because that's when people are home. Simple. That's when people are home. That's the practical time to make it. Okay. Even if the kid's, by the way, in the hospital or whatever, you still, even if the kid's not there, you still do a Shalom Zachar. You know, a kid could be born Friday, the mother's still in the hospital over Shabbos. So you do the Shalom Zachar even if the kid's not there. Okay, now, the father of the baby has an achiyuv of an aliyah, the Shabbos before the bris. There's a chiyuv, but he doesn't push away like a yard site that's that Shabbos comes before the father, but if the bris is the middle of the week, it's a machlekes, who comes first? The father, the Shabbos before the bris, or a yard site that's during the week. Well, they try to work it out different ways, make different minyanim or whatever it may be. No, because the problem is, there's again, both of them are Kohen and both of them are Levium, and you can't, so what do you do? So then there's halachos guiding, dictating who gets which aliyah first, who has precedence, who doesn't, doesn't. Okay, now, a father has a biblical mitzvah to circumcise his kid. If he doesn't circumcise the kid, so even though in the Torah it says, that if you don't do a bris, there's only two positive mitzvahs that you get kares for. If you didn't bring a carbon Pesach, and you didn't bring it Pesach Sheni either, or if you don't do a bris. But the halacha is, even though until the kid's bar mitzvah, the obligation is on the father, but bottom line is, once the kid becomes bar mitzvah, the obligation is on the kid himself. And if he doesn't do a bris, so then he gets kares. But the father never gets kares. The only question is, what happens if a father doesn't want to do a bris? So it says in halacha like this. What happens, let's say, a father will come back, you're supposed to do a bris ideally early in the morning. We'll get to there later. What do you do first? Is it morning, less people, afternoon, more people? But what happens, it says, as long as the father's coming back on the 8th day, you wait for the bris until the father's going to come back. What happens if the father's not coming back for a week, 2 weeks, or whatever? So then, Bais Din has an obligation. The obligation becomes on Bais Din to do a bris on the kid. After the kid becomes bar mitzvah and he didn't have a bris, so then the obligation is on the kid.
When is it 5 kares? When he passes away after?
No, if a boy himself becomes bar mitzvah, he gets kares.
Every day is another.
He's over a mitzvah say every day, but he's only going to get kares once. I mean, he'll die before 50 or 60, depending. Again, today the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya doesn't apply, but in those days, yeah, he would die before 50 or 60. So, okay. Now, ideally, if the father, the obligation of bris milah is on the father. What happens if the father doesn't know how to do a bris, like most fathers don't? So then he has to appoint a shliach. And the shliach is the moil. But he has to appoint him, in fact, by a bris. And if you're up there in the front, you'll hear the male says to the guy, he gives him the knife, and the guy gives the knife back to the male, and he says, I appoint you as a shliach to do the bris of my son, because the obligation really is on the father. So therefore, there's a din. What happens if the father knows how, the father's a moil? He knows how to do a bris. Is he allowed to give it to somebody else or not? So there are opinions that say if he knows how to do it himself, no, he can't do it himself. And some poskim say you can't honor another moil, but you can make him a shliach to do it instead of you. And then some poskim write, and this is the accepted custom, that what happens if the moil is an expert moil, and the father, doesn't do a lot of bris din, obviously. So then, if he's afraid to do it, because he might mess up, so then he can appoint a different moil to do it, even though he actually knows how to do a bris. Okay, that's that.
But the father is not in my today, agreed to do it, their assistants.
Today, the way they do bris din, not with a clamp, that's not a kosher bris, but the way they do it with a shield, right? They put the shield on, they put the shield. The truth of the matter is, if you just know how to take a knife and go like this, it's not a big deal. Priya is hard, mitzitza is hard, but the actual cutting is not. But today again, you don't encourage fathers to do it unless if they really know, how to do it, because otherwise they can mess up. Same thing even with the mitzitza, we'll get to later. Today, during the COVID time or with the blood stories, then with AIDS and all that stuff. So then there's no question how to do mitzitza. You have to suck out the blood, which is vital part of the bris, to suck out the blood. So they didn't want to touch it because then you get germs and the AIDS and all that stuff. So sometimes they did it with a tube to suck out the blood. Sometimes they made the father of the baby do it. The problem is having the father of the baby do it, he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what he's doing. And then he's not going to do a mitzitza properly. So then the question is it better for the male to do it with a tube properly, or the father to do it himself, straight mouth to mouth, without doing it properly? It was a big discussion amongst Milah years ago, what they should do with that. Okay, if the father... What happens if the father doesn't know? This can happen. Years ago, the fathers were taken away to prison. The goyim just kidnapped Jews like years ago. And the father doesn't even know he has a kid. So what do? Do you need permission of the father to do the bris? So normally, halacha says you try to get the bris midaita. The father should be aware of it. But if the father's not around or he doesn't know that he had a son, so what are you going to do? So then you do the bris without his permission. Why? Because there's an assumption, you could do something good for somebody without him even knowing about it. And it's a schus for the father to do the bris on his son. So if he's doing the bris on his son, so therefore it's a schus, he could do it without his permission.
So in the case where you said it is between the tube and the father not necessarily knowing, which one would be?
I don't know. Some do this, some do that. The best thing is the male to do straight mitzitza. That's the best thing.
The male could be sick, comes as a shliach.
Okay, but the question is, does the father know how to do mitzitza? The whole concept of mitzitza is it's part of the mamish. It says in the halachic, without mitzitza, it's sakona for the kid. So they, again, the tube, some people were machmis, some people were mekel. It was a whole discussion. But there was Milah that refused to do it, so they had no choice. Okay,